Look it up! I want this thing off my street before the ceremony!
That's what the HOA president yelled at the Worsham towing operator, standing at the back of my Ford F-250 at 6:15 Saturday morning. The truck had the cedar wedding arch I built for Greer in the bed. Greer was the woman I was supposed to be marrying at 11. The HOA president had been trying to tow my truck for 9 weeks over a violation she had invented. She didn't know my name was Knox Aldridge. She didn't know I had started 6 weeks earlier as the county's new code enforcement inspector. She didn't know her husband's towing contract with the HOA had been on the state attorney general's desk for 34 days. So I didn't shout. I let the hook click shut around my axle. I climbed into my best man's truck with the wedding arch in his bed instead. Tell me below, would you have stopped them or let her tow her own indictment off the street? My name is Knox Aldridge, and I live with my fiancée Greer at 2817 Whisperbrook Lane in Spring Hill, Tennessee, about 30 minutes south of Nashville. The townhouse is one of 240 units in a planned community called Whisperbrook Estates. We bought it 3 months ago, the week we set the wedding date. I was born in Spring Hill. I grew up in Spring Hill. I left at 18 to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. I served 8 years as a combat engineer and an EOD technician. 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Syria. After my last re-enlistment ran out, I took my GI Bill to Middle Tennessee State and earned a degree in construction management. I spent 4 years building healthcare facilities for a Nashville commercial contractor before I came home. I started 6 weeks ago as a Williamson County Code Enforcement Inspector. I was 32 days into my 90-day probationary period when the wedding morning happened. Greer and I have been together since we were 18 years old. She left Spring Hill the same week I did, but for the University of Tennessee. She came back 4 years later with a teaching certificate. She has been a kindergarten teacher at Allendale Elementary for 8 years. She remembers most of her students by name 3 years after they graduate. She is the calm in every room she walks into. Her father had been doing physical therapy for 2 years to walk her down our aisle without the brace from his hip replacement. I designed the wedding arch in pencil at our kitchen table the week we bought the townhouse. It was 8 feet wide, 6 feet tall, made of clear cedar and white pine. The crossbeam was carved with the date and a small sprig of dogwood, which is the Tennessee state tree. I built it in the garage of my best man, Calhoun Massey. He had been my squad leader in Iraq. He now ran a custom millwork shop in Columbia, 20 miles south. We finished the arch on a Wednesday evening, 3 days before the wedding. I parked my Ford F-250 in our driveway when I got home that Wednesday night with the arch wrapped in moving blankets in the bed. The first letter from the Whisperbrook Estates HOA arrived in our mailbox the next morning. Cream paper, brown ink, the signature of Madam President, Tabitha Worsham. The letter informed me that an unauthorized commercial vehicle had been observed in our driveway. It directed me to remove the vehicle within 48 hours or face a fine of $125 per day. It enclosed a copy of Whisperbrook Estates Vehicle Compliance Standards Section 5.2. I read the letter twice on the porch with my coffee. I had owned that Ford F-250 for 6 years. It had no commercial decals, no business signage, no DOT number. Under Tennessee Code Annotated Section 55-3-115, my truck was a Class A passenger pickup. It was not a commercial vehicle. I drafted a polite written response that evening, citing the statute. I delivered it by hand to the Whisperbrook Estates HOA office Friday morning, 2 days before the wedding. The young woman at the desk told me, in a voice that did not quite hide her concern, that Mrs. Worsham would respond when she had time. Mrs. Worsham did not wait. She called Worsham Towing and Recovery, the family business her husband Curtis ran out of an industrial yard 6 miles south of Spring Hill. She put my truck on the watch list for the weekend. I did not learn that until Saturday at 6:15 in the morning. I drafted my polite written response Friday morning. I delivered it to the Whisperbrook Estates HOA office Friday at 10. I went home and worked the rest of the day on a list of last-minute errands for Saturday. Linens to pick up at the venue. Greer's parents to meet at the church at 3 for the rehearsal. Calhoun coming in from Columbia at 5 for the rehearsal dinner. The cake arriving Saturday morning at 8. Tabitha Worsham's response to my polite written letter arrived in my mailbox Friday at 4:15. It was a second compliance notice. This one was 3 pages, notarized. It assessed a cumulative fine of $750 for the 4 days the truck had been in the driveway. It did not address the Tennessee statute I had cited. It cited a different section of the Whisper Brook Estates bylaws and added 2 additional violations. The first was for the utility trailer I had parked in the driveway behind the truck. The second was for the contractor's toolbox bed, which she categorized as permanent commercial equipment. The letter directed me to remove the truck and the trailer by midnight Friday, or face removal under HOA authorized vendor agreement. I read the letter at 4:20. I had a wedding rehearsal to be at by 3 the next afternoon. I had no time to fight the HOA on Friday evening. I called Calhoun on his drive up from Columbia. Cal, we may have a Saturday morning issue. I described the letter. Calhoun listened. He had served with me long enough to know what I was really asking. Knox, what do you want to do? I want to get married tomorrow. Then let me come over at 5:30 in the morning. I'll back my truck up to your driveway. We'll move the wedding arch into mine. If she comes for your truck Saturday morning, she comes for an empty truck. We'll deal with her on Sunday morning when we have time to do it right. That was the plan. I did not park my truck somewhere else Friday night. I let it sit in my driveway with the wedding arch and the bed. I wanted Tabitha Worsham to see exactly what was in that truck if she sent anybody for it on a Saturday morning before a wedding. After I hung up with Cal, I called my supervisor at the county. Director Wendell Pickering was in his 60s. He had been a Williamson County code enforcement officer for 31 years. He picked up on the second ring. Knox, I heard about the letter. Drew Vega in our office said you brought a copy in this morning. Sir, I did. I wanted you to know in case the situation escalates over the weekend. Knox, Worsham Towing has been a problem in this county for 9 years. Their state operating license is currently flagged for review. Their HOA contracts have been under quiet investigation since March. Whatever happens tomorrow morning, you handle it the way I would expect any inspector in his probationary period to handle it. Calmly, with documentation, without any escalation that would compromise the larger case. Yes, sir. Knox, get married. Worry about the rest on Monday. I thanked Director Pickering and hung up. Greer came home from her last bridal shower at 8 that evening. We sat on the back patio with 2 cups of decaf chamomile and watched the dogwood in the back planter for 40 minutes. I told her about the letter at 8:20. I told her the plan with Calhoun. I told her about Director Pickering. She listened. She held my hand. Knox, we are getting married tomorrow. Whatever happens at 6 in the morning is not the wedding. The wedding is at 11. Do not let her steal the wedding. I told her I would not. I lay in bed beside her at 10:30 and listened to the cicadas in the back planter. I thought about the 7 months of quiet harassment we had endured since we had moved into Whisper Brook Estates. I thought about the 11 other households on Whisper Brook Lane who had received compliance notices in the same envelope I had received mine in. I thought about the older couple at 2843, the Bennington family. They had paid Worsham Towing $840 in March to retrieve their daughter's Honda Civic after her one-night visit. I thought about my new badge in the kitchen drawer. I did not sleep until midnight. I got up at 4:30 in the morning to make coffee. Calhoun pulled into our driveway at 5:28 Saturday morning in his black Ram 2500. Greer was already at her parents' house in Spring Hill, where the bridesmaids were getting ready. I was in jeans and an old Marine Corps t-shirt I had not worn in years. The plan was a wedding arch transfer, then me in the shower, then Calhoun and I at the venue by 7:30. The first thing we did was unwrap the moving blankets to inspect the cedar one last time before the transfer. The second thing we did, both of us at the same moment, was hear the air brakes of a tow truck turning the corner onto Whisper Brook Lane. Calhoun looked at me. Knox, did you hear that? I heard it. The Worsham Towing and Recovery flatbed pulled past the front of our townhouse at 5:32 in the morning. The driver was a heavy man in a yellow safety vest with the Worsham logo over the breast pocket. Behind the flatbed, in a separate champagne Cadillac Escalade with personalized license plates that read Madam P, came Tabitha Worsham. She got out of the Escalade in white capris, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard. She walked up our driveway with the kind of bright, brittle smile a person wears when they have decided. This Saturday morning was going to be the morning she finally won. Mr. Aldridge, the vehicle is being removed under Section 5.2. I had a wedding arch in the bed of my truck. Greer was 4 hours away from walking down an aisle her father had been doing physical therapy for 2 years to walk her down. Calhoun Massey, my best man and former Marine squad leader, set his coffee down on the gravel of my driveway. He stepped between me and the tow truck driver. I held up one hand. Cal, no, let her do it. Calhoun did not understand at first. He looked at me. He looked at the wedding arch in the bed. He looked at me again. Knox, the arch. Cal, help me move the arch into your truck. Then let her tow mine. Calhoun and I lifted the wedding arch out of the bed of my F250 in one careful, two-man move. We carried it 12 feet across the driveway. We placed it in the bed of his Ram 2500 and rewrapped it in the moving blankets we had unfolded 38 seconds earlier. The Worsham towing flatbed driver watched us the whole time. He did not say anything. I walked across the driveway to the flatbed driver. I held out my hand. Sir, my name is Knox Aldridge. I am about to let you tow my truck. Before you do, I would like to introduce myself. The driver shook my hand. He was a man named Donovan Vale, about 45, with a Marine's tattoo on his left forearm. Donovan, I work for Williamson County Code Enforcement. I am 32 days into my probationary period. The truck you are about to hook up belongs to me. The HOA bylaw that authorizes you to hook it up is unenforceable under Tennessee Code 55-3-115. The contract your boss holds with this HOA is currently under review by the Tennessee Attorney General. I am asking you to film me on your dash cam for the chain of custody. I am not stopping you from doing your job. I am informing you that the larger arrangement here is going to come apart this week. I would like you to do your job knowing what I know. Donovan Vale looked at me for a long second. He looked at Tabitha Worsham, who was beside her Escalade with her clipboard, watching us from 20 feet away. He looked at Calhoun Massey, who had his own phone up and was already filming. He nodded. He climbed up into his cab. He turned the dash cam on. He climbed back down. He hooked the F250 to the flatbed in the slow, careful motions of a man. He had decided to do every step of this particular job by the book. Tabitha Worsham yelled across the driveway. Donovan, you do not need to talk to him. The vehicle is non-conforming. Hook it up and go. Donovan Vale did not look at her. He finished hooking up. He winched the F250 onto the flatbed. He secured the tie-downs. He walked back to the cab. He paused at the driver's side door. He looked at me one more time. Mr. Aldridge, I am very sorry about your wedding day. Donovan, I appreciate that. I will see you on Tuesday. Donovan Vale drove the flatbed and my F250 down Whisperbrook Lane at 5:53 in the morning. Tabitha Worsham followed in her Escalade. Calhoun Massey looked at me from beside his Ram 2500. Knox, get in the shower. We have a wedding to get to. The wedding happened. Greer's father walked her down the aisle without the brace from his hip replacement. He had done physical therapy 3 days a week for 2 years to make that walk. He cried twice. So did I. So did everybody in the second row. Calhoun Massey gave a best man speech that made the older Marines in the back of the venue stand up and applaud for 45 seconds. He did not mention the towing. The cake arrived at 8 on the dot. The rented chairs arrived at 9. The wedding arch held above the wooden floor of Greer's parents' barn at 11 o'clock sharp. The cedar I had carved with the dogwood sprig was lit by sunlight coming through the loft window at exactly the angle I had designed it for. We danced until 10 that night. We drove 45 minutes to a small mountain cabin Greer's parents had rented for us in the Smokies. We slept until 10 the next morning. Sunday at noon, on the cabin's wraparound porch, I made coffee for my new wife in the small drip pot the cabin owner had stocked. I checked 43 text messages, 11 voicemails. 6 of the voicemails were from neighbors at Whisperbrook Estates. 3 of the voicemails were from Donovan Vale. 2 were from Director Wendell Pickering. 1 was from a woman I had not yet met, named Aurelia Bennington. I listened to Donovan first. Mr. Aldridge, this is Donovan Vale at Worsham Towing. I am calling because 2 other vehicles were towed from Whisperbrook Lane yesterday morning between 8 and 10. One belonged to a woman who was at her brother's funeral in Murfreesboro. The other belonged to a contractor who was working a job at his daughter's house out near Leaper's Fork. Neither vehicle had any commercial markings. Both were towed under Section 5.2 of the Whisperbrook bylaws. I am leaving Worsham Towing tonight. I will give you a statement Tuesday morning. I listened to Aurelia Bennington next. Mr. Aldridge, my name is Aurelia. I live at 2843 Whisperbrook Lane. I have lived in Whisperbrook Estates for 16 years. Mrs. Worsham has been billing me, and most of my neighbors, since 2022. I have been watching what she has been doing to your truck for the past 2 months. I would like to come to your house Sunday evening when you get home, if you would be open to that. I listened to Director Pickering last. Knox, I heard about the wedding morning. 3 calls this morning from Whisperbrook residents. The Tennessee Public Service Commission has opened a formal investigation into Worsham towing as of Saturday at noon. Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance has flagged Curtis Worsham's operating license. I have spoken to the county attorney. We will meet Tuesday morning in my office at 8. Bring everything you have. I made Greer a fresh cup of coffee. I told her about every voicemail. She listened. Knox, are you going to handle this? I am going to do it the way Director Pickering told me to do it. Calmly. With documentation, with no escalation that compromises the larger case. Then handle it. We drove home Sunday afternoon. We arrived at the townhouse at 4. Aurelia Bennington walked across Whisperbrook Lane at 5, with a binder in her arms. She sat at our kitchen table for 2 hours. The binder contained 63 pages. Tabitha Worsham had cited Aurelia 31 times in 3 years for various invented violations. Worsham Towing had towed her vehicles 11 times. Aurelia had paid Worsham Towing $6,400 over those 3 years. The binder also contained photographs of 17 other households at Whisperbrook Estates that had been targeted. Aurelia had been quietly assembling the file since 2022. She had stopped only because her husband, a retired veterinarian named Wesley Bennington, had passed away in February of this year. She had wanted to grieve quietly. She set the binder down on our kitchen table at 7 o'clock Sunday evening. Mr. Aldridge, I have been waiting for the right neighbor to give this to. Welcome to Whisperbrook Lane. I walked into Director Pickering's office Tuesday morning at 7:55. The County Code Enforcement Office was on the second floor of the Williamson County Administrative Complex on Public Square in Franklin. The first was Vivian Threadgill, the Assistant County Attorney for Code Enforcement Matters. She was 48, a former public defender, and she had been with the county since 2014. The second was Hadley Kessler, a senior investigator with the Tennessee Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission regulates towing operations in Tennessee. She had driven down from Nashville at 6 in the morning. The third was Ardith Walcott, the Deputy Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance. The Department of Commerce and Insurance licenses every towing company in the state. I sat down at the conference table. I set Aurelia Bennington's 63-page binder on the surface beside Donovan Vale's signed statement. Donovan Vale himself was on the speakerphone in the middle of the table, calling in from his lawyer's office in Spring Hill. For the next 4 hours, the four of us walked through every page of every document. What we assembled, by noon Tuesday, was a complete picture. The operation had been running quietly for 3 years across 4 upscale planned communities in North Williamson County. Tabitha Worsham was the HOA president of Whisperbrook Estates. She also served as paid vehicle compliance consultant for 3 other HOAs in the county. Those were Crestmore Glen, Saddle Creek Village, and Hawksbridge Commons. She had negotiated those personal services contracts herself. In each of those 4 HOAs, Tabitha had inserted a vehicle compliance bylaw section, identical to Section 5.2 of the Whisperbrook Estates bylaws. In each of those 4 HOAs, Worsham Towing and Recovery, owned by her husband Curtis, held the exclusive HOA-authorized towing contract. In each of those 4 HOAs, Worsham Towing was charging a $500 hook fee, plus $75 per day of storage. In each of those 4 HOAs, Tabitha received a personal 25% kickback on every fee. The kickbacks were paid quarterly into a Wells Fargo account titled Tabitha L. Worsham Compliance Consulting. Hadley Kessler had been investigating predatory towing complaints in Williamson County since the previous October. She had received 41 complaints across the 4 HOAs in 8 months. She had not been able to connect them until Donovan Vale's statement. His statement gave her the names of every non-conforming vehicle Worsham Towing had hooked from those communities since 2022. The total billed across the 3 years was $482,700. Curtis Worsham's commercial towing license, Hadley confirmed, had expired in March of the previous year. He had been operating without a valid license for 15 months. Ardith Walcott set her coffee down. She looked across the table at me. Mr. Aldridge, I have been the Deputy Commissioner since 2018. We have not had a case this clean in 5 years. The state can act on this by the end of the week. Vivian Threadgill flipped to a tabbed page in her own binder. Knox, Director Pickering and I would like to ask you something. The protocol in your probationary period would normally have you handing this case off to a senior inspector. The county would prefer to keep you on it. You know the people. You know the neighborhood. You are the inspector who pulled it together. Are you willing to lead the field service of the orders this Friday morning? I looked at Director Pickering. He nodded once. Vivian, yes, I will lead it. She slid a typed assignment sheet across the table. Then on Friday morning at 6:30, you will walk up to 2901 Whisperbrook Lane. You will be in your county uniform. You will be accompanied by 2 sheriff's deputies, Hadley Kessler from the Public Service Commission and a representative from Commerce and Insurance. You will hand-deliver the cease and desist orders and the impoundment notice for Worsham Towing. We have authorization for a coordinated multi-agency action. Director Pickering smiled for the first time that morning. Knox. The wedding was on Saturday. The honeymoon is on the county. Friday morning is the beginning of a new chapter. The next 3 days became the most coordinated operation I had been part of since my last deployment. Tuesday afternoon, Hadley Kessler obtained an administrative subpoena for Tabitha Worsham's Wells Fargo records under the Tennessee Towing Practices Act. By Wednesday morning, the bank had produced 6 years of statements. The statements confirmed every kickback transfer Donovan Vale had described in his statement. Tuesday evening, Vivian Threadgill drafted the cease and desist orders. She drafted the impoundment notice for Worsham Towing and Recovery. She drafted a public records demand for every HOA financial disclosure filing across the 4 affected communities. She drafted predicate paperwork for a state-level investigation into the 4 HOA boards Tabitha had quietly inserted herself into. Wednesday morning, I drove out to each of the 4 HOAs in my personal vehicle. I wore a polo shirt and a clipboard like any other Tuesday morning. I quietly interviewed 23 additional residents who had been targeted by Worsham Towing's invented violations. I drove 98 miles between Crestmore Glen, Saddle Creek Village, Hawksbridge Commons, and back. I came home at 9 that evening with 11 new sworn statements. Greer made me a sandwich at 9:15. She did not ask many questions. She refilled my coffee 3 times. We were 5 days into our marriage. We had agreed at the cabin Sunday that the first week of married life would be the week the case was built. Wednesday at 11:30 in the evening, Donovan Vale arrived at our front door with a manila envelope. The envelope contained the dispatch logs, the digital tow records, and the dash cam footage from the Saturday morning tow. It also contained a complete spreadsheet of every Worsham Towing tow from the 4 HOAs since January 2022. Donovan had quietly downloaded the records before he had given his notice on Sunday evening. I thanked him. I made him coffee. I told him he had nothing to apologize for. Mr. Aldridge, I am sorry I drove that flatbed Saturday morning. Donovan, you had a job. You did the job by the book. You also gave me the chain of custody I needed to do mine. Mr. Aldridge, I have a wife and 2 daughters. The Tennessee Unemployment Office opens at 8 in the morning. Donovan, the county is hiring 2 new code enforcement assistants in October. I will personally walk your application across the desk on Friday afternoon. He thanked me. He went home. Thursday morning, the county attorney filed the cease and desist papers under seal in Williamson County Chancery Court. By 2 in the afternoon, Chancellor Beecham had signed the orders. By 4, Hadley Kessler had coordinated with the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance to schedule the simultaneous license suspension for Worsham Towing. Thursday evening, Director Pickering drove out from Franklin to Spring Hill in his county vehicle. He met me and Calhoun Massey at our townhouse at 6. He sat at our kitchen table with Greer and Aurelia Bennington for 90 minutes. He walked me through every step of the Friday morning service protocol 3 times. He set my new county code enforcement uniform shirt on the kitchen table at 7:30. The shirt was a clean, pressed navy polo with the Williamson County seal on the breast and Inspector Aldridge on the right shoulder. Knox, you have not worn this in front of Mrs. Worsham yet. Tomorrow morning will be the first time. I went to bed at 10. I did not sleep until midnight. Greer slept against my left shoulder. I got up at 4:30 Friday morning. I made coffee. I ironed the polo shirt one more time. I clipped my badge to my belt. I clipped my body-worn camera to my collar. Calhoun Massey pulled into the driveway at 5:45 Friday morning in his black Ram 2500. It was exactly the way he had pulled into the driveway 6 days earlier. He did not say much. The 2 unmarked Williamson County Sheriff cruisers arrived at 5:50. Hadley Kessler arrived at 5:53. Ardith Walcott from Commerce and Insurance arrived at 5:55, in her own Subaru, wearing a dark suit. Vivian Threadgill from the county attorney's office pulled in at 6 exactly, with a leather courier bag full of typed orders. We assembled in my driveway at 6:05. I locked the front door. I kissed Greer on the porch. She held my chin in her right hand for one moment. "Knox, do it the way you said you would do it." "Yes, ma'am." We walked. By Tuesday afternoon, Tabitha Worsham knew that her Saturday morning had not gone the way she had expected. She did not know about the multi-agency operation being assembled in Director Pickering's office. She did not know about the subpoena Hadley Kessler had served on Wells Fargo. She did not know that Donovan Vale was no longer employed by Worsham Towing. She knew only 3 things. Her favored tow driver had not returned 3 of her phone calls. Aurelia Bennington had been seen walking across Whisper Brook Lane to my front door Sunday evening with a binder. And the county code office had not returned her angry voicemail, demanding to know why one of her neighbors had been writing letters about Whisper Brook bylaws on county letterhead. She responded the way Tabitha Worsham responded to every situation she could not control. She escalated. By Tuesday evening, a fresh compliance notice had been hand-delivered to my front door. It cited my fence-stained color and my back patio planter arrangement. It also cited the porch swing Greer's grandmother had given us as a wedding gift the previous month. The cumulative fine was now $1,100. By Wednesday morning, a complaint had been filed with the Williamson County Human Resources Office. The complaint alleged that I, in my capacity as a probationary code inspector, was abusing my position. The accusation was that I was harassing a community board member who had taken legitimate enforcement action against my personal residence. By Wednesday afternoon, Tabitha had personally walked into the Williamson County Administrative Complex. She carried a typed letter demanding that I be removed from my probationary appointment. She wore white slacks and a gold-buttoned blazer, with a clipboard and a portfolio binder. Director Wendell Pickering received her at the front desk in his shirt sleeves. He invited her to his office. He listened to her presentation for 43 minutes without interruption. He thanked her for bringing her concerns directly to county leadership. He told her the matter would be carefully considered and that she would receive a written response in due course. He walked her out of the building at 3:11 in the afternoon. He sat down at his desk. He pulled out his phone. He sent me a single text message. "Knox." She came in. She walked herself into the cleanest formal complaint we have ever received. "Friday morning is going to be a good morning." I read the text in my truck in the parking lot of Crestmore Glen at 3:14. By Wednesday evening, Tabitha had also called the chair of the Williamson County Code Enforcement Citizen Advisory Board. The chair was a retired surveyor named Truett Boswell. She asked him to consider reviewing my appointment under the citizen feedback process. Truett Boswell was the man who had hired me. He had served on a federal building safety review board for 11 years before he retired. He listened to Tabitha for 19 minutes. He thanked her. He hung up. He called me on his way home from the lumber yard at 7 that evening. "Knox, Mrs. Worsham is escalating in writing. Every escalation she puts in writing this week makes the Friday morning operation cleaner. Stay calm. Document everything she sends. Make no move until Friday." I told him I would. By Wednesday night, Tabitha had also sent Greer a personal email at her teaching address at Allendale Elementary. The email was 3 paragraphs of polite but pointed language. It suggested Greer might want to reconsider her household's relationship with the Whisper Brook community. It claimed her husband's ongoing aggressive posture was creating an unfortunate atmosphere of hostility for the families on the lane. Greer printed the email. She read it twice. She handed it to me at the kitchen table. "Knox, she is trying to get me to pressure you. She is trying to get the case to go away by Friday." "Knox, Friday is in less than 48 hours. "Yes, ma'am." Greer set the email face down on the kitchen table. She poured me a fresh cup of coffee. "Knox, walk her to her door in your uniform Friday morning. Walk her to the door I should have been able to come home to last weekend." I told her I would. By Thursday morning, Tabitha Worsham had spent 36 straight hours trying to figure out why every escalation she had thrown at me had landed silently in the air. Director Pickering had not returned her second visit. The county attorney's office had not responded to her formal complaint. The HOA office staff at Whisper Brook had quietly told her in their Wednesday afternoon staff meeting they were no longer comfortable processing additional Aldridge family violations. They wanted to wait until the Worsham contract review concluded. Tabitha had not been told there was a Worsham contract review. The HOA staff had heard about it from Aurelia Bennington, who had heard about it from me. Thursday at noon, Tabitha called her husband Curtis at the Worsham towing yard. "Curtis, we have a problem." The phone call was, by then, being captured on a federal-grade audio recorder in Hadley Kessler's office in Nashville. The wiretap warrant on the Worsham towing business line had been signed by Tennessee Judge Marlena Strickland Wednesday morning at 11. Hadley Kessler later told me that the conversation between Tabitha and Curtis Worsham that Thursday afternoon was the cleanest single piece of evidence she had ever obtained. She had never gotten anything that clean against an HOA officer in 14 years of regulatory work. Tabitha told Curtis to start moving the books. She told him to shred everything that's in the orange folders. She told him to move the 4 oldest dispatch logs into the secondary lot truck and drive them off-site by sundown. She told him to tell the dispatcher to delete the kickback spreadsheet from the cloud server tonight. Curtis Worsham was a 52-year-old man. He had inherited his father's towing business in 2009. He had not been particularly good at running it for the 17 years since. He was also the kind of husband who did, eventually, what his wife told him to do. He started the destruction at 3 in the afternoon. What Curtis did not know was that Hadley Kessler had been monitoring the Worsham towing cloud server's activity logs since Monday. The kickback spreadsheet had been imaged twice by federal protocol before any deletion attempt could occur. The orange folders had been digitally photographed from the records management server before Curtis ever touched a paper copy. The 4 oldest dispatch logs had been backed up to the Tennessee Department of Commerce and insurance servers Tuesday morning. Every document Curtis Worsham destroyed Thursday afternoon already existed in 3 independent state agency archives. By 6 in the evening, Curtis was driving his secondary lot truck north on I-65 with 8 orange folders in the front cab beside him. He was pulled over by 2 unmarked Tennessee Highway Patrol vehicles at the Brentwood exit at 7-Eleven. He was not arrested. The patrol officers asked him for his license, his registration, and his current operator's authority. He could produce 2 of the 3. They thanked him politely. They returned his license. They handed him a written notice that his commercial vehicle authority had been administratively suspended at 5:30 that afternoon. They asked him not to operate the vehicle again until further notice. They asked him to drive the vehicle the 4 miles to his home in Spring Hill, park it in his driveway, and not start it. Curtis Worsham drove the 4 miles to his home in Spring Hill. He parked the truck in his driveway. He walked into his kitchen, where his wife was eating leftover ravioli at the counter. He told her what had happened. Tabitha Worsham did not finish the ravioli. She stood at the kitchen window of 2901 Whisperbrook Lane until 2 in the morning Friday, watching the cul-de-sac for any sign of headlights. She finally went to bed at 2:15. She did not sleep. Friday morning at 5:45, Calhoun Massey pulled into my driveway in his black Ram 2500. The county sheriff cruisers arrived at 5:50. The agencies assembled by 6. I kissed Greer on the porch at 6:05. We walked north along Whisperbrook Lane in the lavender first light of a Tennessee Friday morning at 6:06. I walked first. I was in my pressed Navy County polo with Inspector Aldridge on the right shoulder. I had my body camera clipped to my collar, my badge clipped to my belt, my official county clipboard in my left hand. Director Wendell Pickering walked at my left in his own uniform. Vivian Threadgill walked at my right with the leather courier bag of typed orders. Behind us came the 2 uniformed Williamson County Sheriff deputies, Hadley Kessler from the Tennessee Public Service Commission and Ardith Walcott from the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance. Calhoun Massey walked with his own phone up beside Aurelia Bennington, who was in her late husband's Tennessee Volunteers windbreaker. We were 8 people walking down a quiet suburban street at 6 in the morning toward a single front door. 3 porch lights came on as we passed. 3 sets of neighbors stepped out into their entryways with their coffee. Nobody said anything. Nobody got in our way. We arrived at the front walk of 2901 Whisperbrook Lane at 6:14. Tabitha Worsham was at her kitchen window in a quilted bathrobe with a coffee mug in her right hand. Curtis Worsham sat at the breakfast bar in flannel pajamas and slippers. The champagne Cadillac Escalade with the Madame P plates sat in the driveway. The towing flatbed Curtis had been ordered home in sat on the curb behind it. Tabitha Worsham saw the 8 of us turn up her front walk. The mug in her hand froze halfway to her mouth. She stayed very still for 1 full second. Then she set the mug down on the kitchen counter, very carefully, the way a person sets down something they suddenly realize is fragile. I rang her doorbell at 6:15 Friday morning. She opened the door at 6:16. She did not say anything. The look on her face moved through three distinct expressions: confusion, recognition, the slow understanding of a woman who had not yet grasped the address, the agency, and the uniform standing on her porch. I introduced myself by my full title. Mrs. Worsham, my name is Knox Aldridge. I am a Williamson County Code Enforcement Inspector. I am here this morning with Director Wendell Pickering of Williamson County Code Enforcement, with Vivian Threadgill of the Williamson County Attorney's Office, with 2 deputies from the Williamson County Sheriff's Department, with Senior Investigator Hadley Kessler of the Tennessee Public Service Commission, and with Deputy Commissioner Ardith Walcott of the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance. I held out the first set of orders. This is a cease and desist order from Williamson County Chancery Court. It enjoins the Whisperbrook Estates Homeowners Association from any further enforcement action against any household in this community. The injunction stands pending a full county audit of the vehicle compliance program. Vivian Threadgill held out the second set. This is a notice of impoundment for Worsham Towing and Recovery, effective at noon today, signed by Chancellor Beecham. All vehicles currently held at the Worsham Towing Yard will be released to their lawful owners, with full restitution of all fees paid since January 2022. Ardith Walcott held out the third set. This is a formal license suspension for Worsham Towing and Recovery, signed by Commissioner Lakin yesterday afternoon. All commercial towing operations are suspended, pending a hearing scheduled for August 14th. Hadley Kessler held out the fourth set. This is a notice of formal investigation by the Tennessee Public Service Commission. The investigation will examine all towing operations conducted under the Whisperbrook Estates HOA contract from January 2022 to the present. Vivian Threadgill held out the fifth set. This is a personal civil complaint filed by 23 residents of 4 Williamson County HOAs against you, Mrs. Worsham, in your personal capacity. The cumulative damages claim is $642,000. The 2 uniformed sheriff's deputies stepped forward. Mrs. Worsham, Mr. Worsham, we have warrants for your arrest. The charges are operating a commercial enterprise with a suspended license, obstruction of justice, and 3 counts of conspiracy to defraud. Tabitha Worsham did not say anything for a long second. Then she said the only thing that came out of her mouth. Mr. Aldridge, you are the new code inspector. Yes, ma'am. The cuffs went on at 6:24. The state criminal indictment of Tabitha and Curtis Worsham was filed in Williamson County Criminal Court 6 weeks after the Friday morning service. The federal civil case followed 3 weeks after that. Tabitha Worsham pleaded out 4 months later. 48 months in state custody, 2 years of supervised probation, full restitution of $642,000 to the affected residents across 4 HOAs, permanent bar from holding any HOA officer position in the state of Tennessee. Curtis Worsham pleaded the following month to operating a commercial enterprise without a valid license, conspiracy to defraud, and obstruction of justice. 28 months in state custody. He surrendered the Worsham towing business, the lot, and the entire fleet to receivership. The Whisperbrook Estates Homeowners Association called a special election the month after the Friday morning service. Aurelia Bennington ran unopposed for HOA president. She won by acclamation. Her first official act was to dissolve Section 5.2 of the bylaws. She replaced the entire vehicle compliance program with a 1-paragraph clause. The clause required the board to comply with Tennessee Code Annotated, Section 55-3-115. Her second act was to mail a written apology to every household that had been illegally towed since 2022. The other 3 HOAs Tabitha had quietly inserted herself into reformed their own governance within 6 months. The towing kickback contracts were dissolved. The HOA boards were rotated. Donovan Vale started his new job as a code enforcement assistant for Williamson County in October. He drove a county vehicle from the second week on. I received a personal civil settlement of $112,000 from the Worsham liquidation. The county quietly ended my probationary period 7 weeks early at Director Pickering's recommendation. Greer and I used most of the settlement on one project. The Aldridge Family Tennessee Towing Reform Fund opened its doors in Franklin in March. The fund does 3 things. It provides free legal representation for any Tennessee homeowner facing predatory HOA towing or invented vehicle compliance violations. It pays the immediate impoundment fees for any low-income family whose vehicle has been towed under a questionable HOA contract. And it funds a scholarship every year for 2 Tennessee students from Williamson, Maury, or Rutherford counties pursuing degrees in public administration, civil engineering, or nonprofit management. Greer chairs the board. Greer's father walked her down the aisle on our wedding day without the brace from his hip replacement. He has not worn the brace since. Calhoun Massey moved his custom mill workshop from Columbia to Spring Hill in November. He took on an apprentice in February. They built 38 wedding arches in their first year, each carved with a small sprig of dogwood. Aurelia Bennington and I started something else too. The first Saturday of every May is now Whisper Brook Lane Day at our cul-de-sac. We close the lane to through traffic. We pull out long tables under the dogwood trees. The Bennington children drive in from out of town. Calhoun runs the cider press. Donovan Vale runs the kid wagon ride along the safe stretch of the lane. Greer reads from a different children's book on the front porch every year. About 300 neighbors come through every May now. Last May, a kid about 9 years old asked me a question about the cedar wedding arch on display at the Aldridge porch. He asked whether it was the one from the news video. I told him it was. He asked if his sister could borrow it for her wedding sometime. I told him she would not need to borrow it. Calhoun and his apprentice would build her a brand new one, free of charge, through the fund his school had told him about. If this story made you angry, drop a comment below with your own HOA nightmare. I read every one. If it made you smile, share it with somebody who needs to hear that the loud folks don't always win. And if you enjoy this kind of story, slow-built, well-prepared, and finished by people who refuse to give up, hit subscribe. The next one is about an HOA Karen who told a Vietnam veteran his American flag was casting visual disturbance over his late son's headstone. The retired JAG officer next door had been quietly photographing every notice for 14 months. I'll see you next week.